This is digitaltoolsforarchitects.com, Photoshop 1.10 tutorial. This is masks on an adjustment layer. And so this is a continuation of Photoshop 1.8 where I talked about merging an HDR image. I'm actually using the same image here, but the mask on adjustment layer would apply to non-HDR images just like it would to actual HDR images. And so what I'm going to do here, this is particularly relevant because sometimes in an image you want to have an adjustment that's applied to a specific place in the image but not the overall image. And so if we're looking at something like this, I'd like to lighten up the ocean here and this hill and that little bit of beach. So I'd like to kind of adjust that, but I don't really want to adjust the sky. I'm fairly happy with how the sky turned out. So let's come over here and I'm going to create an adjustment layer, and this is just like I did in Photoshop 1.1 to 1.4. This time I'm going to use a curves adjustment, which is Photoshop 1.3, so you can go back and check that tutorial out. This is going to be layer, new adjustment layer, curves, and I'll create a curves adjustment here. We'll call it curves. And so in this particular instance, I want to adjust the curve, and what I want to have happen is I want the darker areas of the image to become lighter. So I know that the darker areas exist down here on the curve, and so what I'll do is I'll set a point here and I'll use the up arrow. You guys know I like the up arrows because it gives me a little bit finer control over my particular image. Now notice that this is lightening up the sky quite a bit. I'm not worried about the sky. I'm going to take care of the sky in a little bit. But for right now, I'm just concerned with the ground here, making the ocean a little bit lighter, so I'll adjust that, right? I could adjust it even further so it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Notice that the sky is becoming almost completely blown out, but I'm working with just that lower part of the image. So we'll pick some medium value, something like that, okay? And so I'll go ahead and close this adjustment layer. And so now what I want to have happen is I want to mask off this upper part of the image. And so the way masking works on a layer, and if we look over here at our layer, we have our adjustment, which is right here. That's the curve, so if I double click it, I'll come back to the curve. And then chained to it here is a mask. And so this mask, that's part of this layer, allows me to select which parts of the image is this adjustment applied to. And the way this works is right now, the mask is completely white. And given that it's completely white, this adjustment applies to the whole image. If I want something on the lower image to shine through without the adjustment applied to it, all I need to do is paint this mask in black, and that region that's in black will shine through. And so in this particular example, I don't want to see the sky, so I'm going to use the paintbrush here. And now one of the things that's important about this is I need to switch from multiply back into normal mode. And so we'll make sure that the brush is in normal mode. I'm going to make sure that my mask is actually selected, and you see that little white rectangle that's shown up around the mask. And from here I'm going to adjust my brush, and I'll start out with a very hard brush at 100%, and I'm going to adjust my size. We'll say something like that works fine. And now what I'll do is I'll make sure that my foreground color is set to black, and so let's flip the color so that it's set to black. And now all I'm going to do is paint black on this particular part of the image. And so as I paint the black, you can see that my original image is shining through. And so let me stop for just a second so you can see this, right? If I turn off my adjustment layer, there's my original image, right? If I turn back on my adjustment layer, the adjustment is applying to anything that's white on the mask, not anything that's black. So I'll get close to the hill here, something like that. Maybe a little bit too far there. We'll correct that in a second. And now let me start to adjust at a little bit finer detail. Let me zoom in. I'm using Control+, and we'll come in over here, and we'll adjust the size of the brush down. So I'll use the bracket key to adjust the size of the brush down, and we'll come right along here along that hillside. Now this is a bit challenging to get it nice and close to the particular hill, but not too far. And you can actually see a little bit of artifacting in my HDR image. Now as I get closer and closer, I'll zoom in just a little bit more. And now I might change my brush to have a little bit different hardness. So I'll have a little bit softer edge to the brush, something like that. And let's decrease the size of this brush down even a little bit more. Like that. It's a little bit softer edge, which allows me to fade that in a little bit better right on the horizon, something like that. So I'm going to hold down spacebar so that I can pan, and we'll continue this process right here. right along the ridge. And so this can take a little bit of time to get just right. And so you'll see sometimes I'll make a mistake and I'll come over like that. And the neat thing about working on a layer mask like this is it's just a matter of painting that particular region back to white. And so I'll flip the colors here, and now I can paint this back in white, and you'll see that I'm correcting that problem. All right, so we'll come in here, let me flip those back again. This time we'll come back up on top, and we'll kind of fill those in a little bit more, right? And we'll continue on our way. Let me hold down space and move over a little bit further. And so you can kind of see what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Right? I'm creating that nice little transition from the hills. And let me just a little bit more so you guys can see it in its full effect here. All right, we'll paint that in. Space bar, and we'll come down here. Right? And so this, to do right, takes a little bit of time. And so we recognize that it takes a little bit of time. I'm going to have to spend some more time down here. So I could, for example, I could flip these, change my brush size down, get in a little bit tighter here. This obviously needs to not be covered, etc. You get the idea. So let me press Control 0, and we can see that my original sky is being applied right here, but my layer mask is applying to this part of the image. And so maybe I'd end up painting over this part of the hill and leaving that nice and dark, which I think actually would probably look a little bit better if I were to cover that up. Let me flip this for just a second to a nice hard brush and increase my size of my brush here. And so maybe we'll come across, oops, see, I was painting in the wrong color. I was painting in white instead of black. So let's go back and paint in black. And so this is, again, the advantage of working on a layer mask, is it's very, very easy to correct a mistake that you might have made. And so let's leave this nice and dark all the way along here. Obviously, I have to adjust for the ocean and fade that in a little bit better because it's a little bit stark right now. And then I can adjust for this hill. Let's make that brush size a little bit smaller. Like so. And that's a little off. Let me zoom in. Control plus, again, zooms in. And let me flip back to white, and we can correct that part of the image like that. Perfect. Control 0, we can see the whole image. And now you can see that I've lightened the ocean, but not the sky or this hill. And so it takes a combination of things to try to get this looking the way you want it to. And so that's Photoshop 1.10, creating a mask on an adjustment layer. These masks work on more than just adjustment layers, so we will revisit the concept of masks a bit later on, but at least you should understand the basics of it now. So once again, that's Photoshop 1.10, masks on adjustment layer, from digitaltoolsforarchitects.com.